Thanks for caring about people.
All right, we are live with the Union of the Unwanted. Ricky, take it away.
Yeah, so what we're attempting to do here, and I'm sure you guys, if anybody listening has heard some of these shows, initially we started doing them about tech and censorship, get everybody from the community together, or a bunch of people from the community together, and the goal was to kind of brainstorm, let's figure out what issues everybody's having, and there's Pat Miletich, the legend, and so Pat, we're live if you're wondering, so if just in case, you know.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.
Stop talking shit about him, guys.
Yeah.
Listen, Pat would be the last person on this call anybody would talk shit about. But so I was just giving everybody kind of the rundown of the idea of what we're attempting to do. I remember telling Sam recently what I kind of was thinking of was doing these roundtable discussions, because it started off with the shows on censorship and all that stuff, and then we're like, hey, let's continue doing this, but let's have more casual type of hangout shows, get people from the community together. I mean, you're bringing together, obviously, everybody's different research they're doing, different interviews they're doing, all their different perspectives, and we could talk about everything and anything and kind of just have fun doing it. And it also helps everybody kind of connect with people that maybe they're not aware of. I know since our last show, some people connected and did swap casts and whatnot. But similar to like, I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Comedy Store, that Sam hangs out at. But one of the beautiful things about it is that you can just go there any random day and you have just awesome lineups and people just show up and whatnot. So that's kind of what I was thinking we could do with like alternative media. You know, we throw the invite out to a bunch of people, and we're thinking of doing it if we can consistently do it every other Monday, and you guys can join us any show, any night that we're doing a show. Show up anytime you want for as long as you want. Hang out, see who's hanging out. Connect with people that maybe you've never connected with, and just be a fun way of kind of sharing research, sharing information, or just bullshitting, whatever it may be, but just kind of bringing the community together. And like we've been talking a lot lately, it's important for the community to stick together, because obviously there is a war on our information and our media and our podcasts and all that stuff. So I think coming together is awesome. And one thing I think you guys have all learned, and I've also learned throughout the years of doing this, is how cool everybody is in the community. Like, it's not competitive at all. Like, everybody's always open to helping each other out and all that stuff. So yeah, so that's basically the idea.
Awesome. Who's all on now?
Okay, can you see everybody, Pat?
No, I cannot.
Oh,
hi, Pat.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Okay, how you doing, guys?
Good. We got Grimerica here. My name's Mike from OBDM. We got Ricky from Ripple Effect, Charlie from Macroaggressions, Ben from Edge of Wonder, and your buddy Jeffrey. And we also have Grand Dunlap as well. And Sam Tripoli will be joining us here whenever he damn well feels like it.
Well, is that Graham? Is that from the because they're going live, right? Is that
that's
what it
right?
is?
That's right.
Okay, yeah. Because unless there's two Graham Dunlaps,
Darren promised me that wouldn't be up there, but somehow he's already thrown me under the bus.
Oh, and let's just forget Jason Bermas in the corner over here.
Oh yeah,
right?
I'm sorry, Jason. Yeah,
that's because he has the crazy screen, so it's But thanks, guys. So we figured, if there's anything on anybody's mind we want to talk about, one thing we've talked a lot about is censorship. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add on that, because I know some of the guys are new; they weren't on the last call. If there's anything I know there's some newer stories too, because Mike was talking about what is it, Mr. Destructive or
Dr. Disrespect being banned off of Twitch for no given reason, but also recently Stefan Molyneux totally deleted off of YouTube, and Gab McGinnis and George Webb, some pretty prominent YouTubers, just no reason, channel deleted. That's it.
Yeah, and what we're actually doing, and Mike's doing all the work, is we're actually attempting to put together a 24/7 D Live, like alt media channel, where it's just constantly streaming You can kind of tune into it anytime you want. It's constantly streaming alternative media. Mike's also working on possibly finding a way of creating an app or whatnot. Mike, do you want to get in on that? Some of these guys who aren't familiar with what we're doing?
Yeah, just a brief rundown. So I'm writing some scripts that lives on a server that will go out to, right now, Sam's website, Broken Simulation, will take all the content from there, download it, and then streams it to a D-Live channel. And so it's kind of like our own little TV station. You tune in, you'll probably see content you never otherwise would have seen. And then once that's done, I'm probably about a week away from completing that automation. Then I will be downloading people's content who chooses and backing that up to the Interplanetary file system so it lives forever on another network. And then creating an application that will be specifically for our type of content, whether it's a paranormal, spirituality, UFO conspiracy. It'll basically be an app for us to be recommended other types of content that we generate, because on YouTube, the algorithm doesn't really work in our favor too much anymore, at least not for longer form content. So it's basically a recommendation app for other type of weird alt media kind of programs. So that's a long-term goal. Hopefully have something up and running probably in about 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, because one of the... Oh,
is it
sorry.
just me or is somebody... I don't know if I'm hearing feedback from somewhere.
Yeah, I am too. If somebody doesn't mind, I guess when you're waiting, maybe mute your microphone so we don't hear all the feedback from everybody. There we go. Whoever it was, the culprit is gone. There we go. But yeah, I mean, I think that algorithm thing is super important, because the thing is, like, you know, when we all got into doing alternative media before that, obviously we were all researchers, right? Independent researchers. You're going down rabbit holes. You find one documentary, you find another documentary, you find one researcher, another researcher. So, you know, James was actually Corbett might still be on this show. I don't know if he's going to make it or not, but he brought up, you know, the cool thing about the web is everybody kind of gets their own corner. Everybody gets to do their own thing, but there is a problem with finding that stuff, right? Like, nobody wants to go to, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of us who are lazy don't want to have to go to James Corbett's website, then go to this person's website, then go to, and if you like 10 different researchers, go to each individual URL and all that stuff. I mean, the nice thing about YouTube initially was you could watch a video, they'd suggest something similar to it, you go down that rabbit hole or whatnot. So we kind of need that to help expose people to new researchers and new documentaries and new podcasters. So that's why what Mike was referring to, some algorithm that could do that would be great. You know, that would really be a step in the right direction. And I should have finished my statement with a question. but is there anything you guys want to talk about? I know, honestly, I know we all kind of have different perspectives on stuff. One conversation I've been having a lot with people recently is this whole race thing, cop thing. You know, everybody has a different opinion on it. How much does anybody want to jump in on, like, what their opinions are on what's going on in America right now, how crazy things are? And
can I start that off being the token black guy?
You know what's funny, Jeff? I was gonna call on you first and pretend it wasn't because you were the token black guy.
That's all right. That's quite all right. Baby. No, I mean, it's honestly more of something. I mean, obviously, you know, of course, there's a lot of craziness going on in the country, whether it's racial, political, social, all of this. On top of COVID, where's your mask? All of this, etc. You know, like we say all the time on the show, man, reality is completely being inverted. Here in St. Louis, and it went freaking national. You know what I mean? This guy over in the Central West End was a very affluent part of St. Louis. Him and his wife, there were people who broke, it's a gated community. So they opened the gate, breached the gate, and they got to, you know, they were outside eating dinner, and these guys see these, you know, 100-some people come walking down the street, and they bring out their guns. Clearly not the most trained guys in the world, because the husband was, you know, aiming his AR kind of at his wife, holding it at his side. But the point is, the media is demonizing these people for trying to protect themselves. These Black Lives Matter, these organizations, which we can get into how deep this goes, who's funding it, where the funding is going, et cetera, they have said, we are going to the suburbs and we're going to take what's ours. We've seen what they've damaged and what they've done all throughout the country in their own land of chop or clap or whatever the fuck it is. People were being raped and people were being shot. So clearly, you know, not all of these things are completely nonviolent, and they've made their intentions clear. So when this family goes out and decides to protect themselves and the media and everybody demonizes them, I think that's very troubling. You know, we could also get into some of these cop situations, obviously not some of the more recent ones, but, you know, some people are being fired for doing their job, and you're seeing mass walk-offs. And for me, the crux of the moral of the story, I guess, it's really upsetting that human beings, Americans, are being demonized for protecting themselves against an organization which we all know, they say who they are. The heads of BLM say we're trained Marxists. And the government's even said these guys are domestic terrorists. So we're on a slippery slope, man. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But the fact that people protecting their homes against clear threats that they've made are being demonized, and something's wrong. Like they're the wrong ones. You know what I mean? NPR last week when they attacked the girl in her car, and she wound up running down one of the whatever you fucking want to call them. The news and NPR was like, you know, right-wing militias or right-wing individuals are targeting protests. Just completely misrepresenting the facts, just making shit up. Like here in St. Louis, they were saying white supremacists, the KKK were at Forest fucking Park. I know people who were there. There was no representation of either of those groups. But they're just pumping this race thing. And whatever. We've been saying for a long time on the show, they're going to fire on every single cylinder to divide us leading up to the 2020 election. And then all of this happened. But like I said, put COVID on top of it, the whole, where's your mask, all that other bullshit. Get away from me, you're not 6 feet. The divide and conquer, unfortunately, man, and we've seen it. It's so stressful to watch. It's working. And we still have 3 or 4 months until the election.
But isn't the problem that like these conversations aren't simple, right? Because it's not like, is there, obviously there is racism in the system. I mean, there's great documentaries like MAFA 21 and you know, you talk about the history of eugenics and all that stuff. I mean, there is issues. There's also issues with police psychologically, not many of them not being able to handle the extra power or being in those stressful situations and to think right on a dime like that. So, you know, the thing about a lot of these topics, they make it black or white. And I don't even mean skin color. I mean, in regards to just either pick this team or that team, but every situation's slightly different. Even the George Floyd thing, like they knew each other. So, you know, and they didn't like each other. So it's not that, I'm not saying it couldn't be motivated by race. Maybe he was but it also, there's a slight chance it also could be that it was more of a personal thing, that he didn't like the guy regardless of his race. So, I mean,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but when Sam comes on, he'll tell you Bishop Gators was on Sam's show once again. We had him on. The guy's mind blowing. Some of what he's talking about, I do believe he's pulling a little nat shit out of pepper. But he was saying that the $20 bill that George Floyd produced had a serial number which matched a seizure of fake money that had come in from China. And supposedly this nightclub and I don't know if all this is true, but this just thickens the plot, that this nightclub that they worked at, that's where they were trafficking illegal immigrants and fake money. And I mean, so there's clearly, and even the whole city of supposedly Minneapolis, the police department, a lot of them, the upper echelon apparently of the police department knew about this operation or these operations. And I don't know if George Floyd was going to snitch or whatever it is, but no, you're absolutely right. People don't get into the fact like, well, they knew each other, they worked together. And then, you know, the deal with the $20 bill, people need to dig more deep on that. Well, and I'm sorry, I'm almost a side note, but do you guys know how much that GoFundMe has for George Floyd's family?
A lot.
It's almost like 20 million. It's
wow.
20 plus $20 million.
What? It's a lot of money. And, you know, guys, real quick.
Good.
Oh, good. Well, I was just going to say, and that where they worked was burned down. So that was one of the places that got burned down in the riots. So it's like you can't, even if that was happening, you can't really go there and check.
And the evidence was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let me just jump in on this really quick because I did a lot of research into it. I couldn't find anything to corroborate the, you know, trafficking, the fake money stuff. But what's hidden away in all of these articles and even that interview with the man that identified George Floyd as working there, as not liking Derek Chauvin for how he had, because he was 17 years there as the in-house cop, of not liking how he treated people and then recanting the next day and saying it was another black guy.
Yes.
What's hidden in that story is they contacted George Floyd's family and it says that they think it may have been personal. Now, what do you do if you're George Floyd's family? You keep your mouth shut just because of that GoFundMe. You know, if the press comes in and asks you, but you don't scream and shout, hey, they didn't like each other, because you don't want to break the narrative that's now suddenly made you wealthy. So they're in a spot. You look at Eric Garner's family. Okay, they came out day one and said, we don't think this is racism. This is police brutality. We're not going along with Al Sharpton. He contacted us. We don't want anything to do with him. And you notice how that was kind of put to bed, and they never really went to his family after that. 2 of his family members died after that, including his daughter, by the way, in short order. I'm not saying they were taken out, but they never focused on the fact it's a police brutality issue. So now let's take defund the police, right? They were planning on doing it anyway. Cuomo in my state was already talking about 2 months ago, 20% cuts in what? Health, law enforcement, and education. It was already there. And now they have this convenient excuse to do so. Meanwhile, any place you don't have police or law enforcement, you end up with what you have in the CHOP, which is a 16-year-old kid dead and a 14-year-old kid clinging on to life because somebody drove through with machine guns and decided to start shooting the place up. There has never been a society that has worked without at least some level of government and some level of law enforcement. If we really want to talk about police reform, we demilitarize them. We find a way to actually rein them in a justice system, not an injustice system of cronyism. And that's where we begin. We don't take human beings out of the equation, which eventually I think is what we're talking about. Do we want Spot the DARPA Boston Dynamics robot rolling up to us like in Singapore in our parks to stay 3 feet away with an attachment that uses less lethal force against us? And that's where we're headed in. Okay,
that's where we're at. I just posted a video of a little R2D2 looking robot rolling through a park in California that's doing that very thing. 360 panoramic view, just can do all of that stuff. Real-time facial recognition. It's already here.
And these are just the first steps in what will become an automation nation where humans are further taken out of the equation and people are put on a UBI. Why else would they put a system into place where people who were working 40 hours a week at a department store and making maybe $500-600 before taxes, that they're now taking home $800 to $1,000 because they're not going to want to go back to work, and it's justified. I get it. At the same time, what are you doing? You're making it impossible for the cash middle and upper middle class to make any money. Bars, restaurants, personal gyms, small businesses that empowered communities are the ones that are taking the hardest hit. Property owners. And if you think that this is going to get better in the next couple months, they got people signing social compacts in my state right now to maybe go back to college. And those compacts include mandatory vaccinations. They're calling for it in the New York State Bar Association. Everybody's ignoring it. And in the New York State Bar Association actually called for it nationwide, not just New York. It actually, I just read it on air on my previous program with John Fitch, where they say the Constitution is problematic and it's failed us in this regard. All right. They're going against the Constitution, and they've already made those University of Tennessee kids sign up, guarantee they're going to take a flu vaccine, which goes against all logic, because guess what? COVID-1984 ain't the fucking flu. But you're going to take that, and then you're going to take an unproven vaccine after the fact, and we're going to protect ourselves from any kind of liability as you sign your soul away. Welcome to fucking America 2020.
I'm kind of curious, does Ben, do you touch on any of these topics? I know you guys do the headlines over there at Edge of Wonder. You'll touch on these every now and again. What is your opinion on everything that's been said thus far?
Yeah, we just did a massive episode on really the background of Antifa and the whole history about it and what's going on. I used to work for the Epoch Times newspaper, and while I was working for them, I actually went to Eric Gardner's home we interviewed his mother. And it was a very interesting experience. Like what you're saying is exactly true. She doesn't, like she was telling us, she doesn't want people to go out and do all this violence and everything else. She just wanted a change to happen. But I think, the root, like going back to this couple that was in St. Louis with the guns and everything, and kind of the overall take that what we get from all of this is that, for example, when I was in Ferguson during the height of the protest, I was just in New York when they were like burning cars around me. I was filming that live actually. And, all of these instances, I just took a step back and I realized everybody's a victim here. The police are victims, you know, the people protesting are victims. And it's like, who is the mastermind behind this? You know, that's the crux of all of this. There's definitely, you know, there's police that are truly trying to do good. And then there's really corrupt police that are getting money and bribes and things like that. Then you have protesters that aren't really protesters. You know, they're like hired and paid and all these different things. And of course, that's when like Soros comes in, and we know that, you know, there's a lot of evidence already that Soros has donated millions to Black Lives Matter, to Antifa. You follow the trail of Black Lives Matter, you go on their website, you go to the donation page, and it takes you to actblue.com. And the founder of actblue.com is a proud Marxist. So it's, and then they give money to the DNC. So, you know, all of these things are really, you know, if people could stop at looking, not, you know, just in general, if we could take a step back from the emotional side of things, because that's the deep state knows how to hit people on the emotional side. And you have an event that happens like this, and, you know, it just happens that this is right before the election. There's a lot of strange things involved, like we already said, about their relationship and all these connections. So you start wondering, you know, looking at this from a different standpoint, who really benefits from these kinds of events? Who wants these changes? You know, looking back at this couple, you kind of think, yeah, you know, they shouldn't have been waving their guns around. You know, obviously they have no training whatsoever, but at the same time, we're defunding the police. So, you know, like just at my home the other day, like massive fireworks have been going on all night for weeks now. And I live next to a police station. No one's doing anything about it. So when they're defunding the police, I don't blame the police for saying, you know what, we're not even, like, no one cares. Like, why should we even answer calls anymore? And I think that when that happens, people are going to take action in their own hands and then get criticized for doing that. And it's just this vicious cycle that the media and the deep state are using to attack the American people. I mean, I think, you know, I haven't heard once of like, okay, what's your demands? Like, what do you want? What's the ultimate goal of the, you know, the protesting and everything else? And I think if they had their way, they would want to change the name of the United States of America. And I think they would want to change the flag. And this is, when you look at communist regimes and communist countries, especially China, this is exactly what happened in history. They destroy the flag. The people, the most violent people, rise to power, and everybody else gets suppressed. And I think
the release of prisoners. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's the thing. I think we're so busy. Not us here. I think everybody in the country is so busy reacting, and they so have MK Ultra, and the social engineers have so mastered the way to MK Ultra countries like this. They know exactly how to push these certain buttons. And we're so busy reacting to each other, watching what we say so I don't fucking sound racist, when in fact, this is a cultural revolution. This is an absolute political, social reset. And then we could easily get into what we were already talking about, transhumanism, AI, the Internet of Things, the end of cash, if you will. I'm at the store today and, you know, you have a card, we're really not accepting cash, because of COVID. And supposedly everyone's short on change. There's no change around apparently now. So, I mean, this is all a part of a plan that they've been, you know, whether it's Agenda 21 or even going back to like someone alluded to the eugenic stuff. This is a well laid out plan that they've been knocking around for quite a while. And, you know, Pat, we talk about it all the time. We're just falling, not us, but we're just falling for it, dude. They're just falling for it. Yeah. You know, the whole silent weapons for, just real quick, the whole silent weapons for quiet wars, you know, this is exactly what's like, this is the handbook of that, what's playing out, you know, get people so busy that they don't have time to research on their own, that it's like, I just get my media or I get, you know, the news on TV and I have to take care of my family and, they tell me to wear masks. I wear a mask. They tell me that, you know, whatever it is. So, you know, it's breaking that cycle.
Yeah. Well, Jeff's talked about it a lot with the Bolshevik Revolution and the Nazi takeover of Germany, you know, the getting rid of police first than basically putting a badge and a gun on criminals and sending them out to terrorize the communities and the citizens and kill political opponents and everything else. But it goes back, the erosion of law enforcement goes back quite a ways. And then a lot of this has been going on for a long time. I've trained law enforcement for 25 years, and I watched it happening where they were lowering the hiring standard in these Democrat-run cities, these liberal-leaning cities, and they lowered it. They lowered hiring standards so much. I mean, you've got people getting promotions in law enforcement that can't even. I mean, they can hardly write. This was a deliberate act to do this. So you've got people who physically aren't capable of taking care of themselves, let alone arrest people safely. There many of whom, and there's a lot of good cops out there. I've seen a lot of them and met thousands upon thousands of them. But yeah, there's some big holes in law enforcement now because of this lowering in hiring standards. And now you've got people. You see it. We're all dealing with it now, where you've got officers. Now imagine yourself. I've known how to fight for many years. I'm pretty good at what I do. But even me being well trained with a gun on my hip and a badge these days, I'm nervous as hell. So now imagine people who they cut their budgets for training, so they don't have any training. Their training is garbage. They get, I tell people or ask people this question, and you guys can answer this. How many hours a year do you think the average police department gets in defensive tactics training?
Less than 10.
4 hours. 4 hours. And that's if they're lucky, right? But they recertify with their weapons all the time, right? So when you've got people that are not confident and don't know how to take care of themselves, they're going to go to that gun. They're going to go to that gun right away, and they're going to start shooting people because they're scared to death, because they can't fight. They don't know how to take care of themselves, period. And that's what we're seeing today. And this was done by liberals, and now the liberals are the ones bitching about it, right? So that's a major, major issue, and nobody's bringing that stuff up.
Yeah, you guys see the Minnesota councilwoman that Minnesota council voted 12-0, I think, to get rid of the police. And I think the chair of the city council, whatever, she's a transsexual woman, I forget her name, Andrea or Amanda something. She voted to get rid of the police, and then, wait for it, hired her own private security.
Yeah, that seems to be the plan with the Strong Cities Network over there in some of those big cities. But we'd agree with you from a perspective from Canada. I mean, it seems like it's bigger than the States, though. It's a technocratic takeover of the world. It's all cylinders, like Ricky was talking about at the beginning. I mean, this is full-blown, full-on, even the data that you can use against them, like you guys were talking about, it's the CDC, the WHO. They've got data out there that it's overt lying and overt obfuscation of it. You can use it against them, but nobody's listening to it. It's very strange to see all the conflicting data that's available to all of us, and nobody seems to care, except for, obviously people like us. And there is obviously a growing group of people that are waking up, but that's pretty mind-blowing from our perspective. I mean, just the masks. I mean, even just the data alone on the masks. And the story keeps changing from the authorities, and yet the states down there. I mean, you guys have counties that are, you got to walk out your house and put your mask on. I mean, I can't believe that. I mean, maybe that's going to happen up here, but right now I feel like we're in a pocket of, a bit of freedom in Alberta right now. But it's gonna. I feel like it's getting worse. It's gonna change. Darren was just mentioning the other day.
I went to lunch today, and the place was packed.
Yeah.
Every single table was packed with people, no social distancing. Like when I went out for lunch today, I see no evidence of it getting worse in Calgary. I mean, like I said, we were on a show the other day, and it's like COVID has not been a part of my life for a while, other than seeing the odd person in a mask, and that's their business. I don't bug them for it. I'd say our mask wearing around town is maybe 10%, if that. It's probably less than that even.
So it's not mandatory in Canada in every store or?
Well, some stores, like some places are.
The only place that's mandatory by the province is like massages and haircuts, I think. So like when I got my massage the other day, when I walked in on the massage table, there was a mask I had to put on. So I just put it on because I don't want the massage place to go out of business because of some state ordinance.
Happy ending?
So
yeah,
and
put the mask over your wiener?
He couldn't breathe. It was like like he's getting choked out
at the store. But I mean, it's less than 10%. And in my day-to-day life, there's zero COVID. Like it's other than the stupid little sheet I got to fill out at work, which I mean, nobody really wants to be doing, but it's part of the rules that you have to do it if you want to stay open. And when I talk to like people on the podcast or Graham, is the only time COVID's really been in my life for the last month or so. When I'm out and about with my friends, I was at an escape room the other day. They didn't, nobody cared. There was no mask. They had a little. The one thing I would say is there's fucking hand sanitizer everywhere. But in the last month, they've taken the foot off the gas of asking you to put it on. Like now it's sitting there and they don't ask you questions anymore. So like, yeah, for the last like month in my day-to-day life, other than when I go on social media, COVID is like a non-issue.
But I think there's a potential that it's going to get worse. That's what I'm worried about. With everything that's happening down there, we usually follow you guys a little bit. And the cases in Canada are coming down. There's a really steep curve. It's coming down. There's hardly anything now. But I feel like it's just going to get ramped up because Canada's tied to China. Our guys are.
It's not made for that though. It's made to make the USA look bad, not Canada.
Yeah, but we're going to follow along. We always seem to follow along. And then just to mark up on Act Blue there, I was just from what I saw personally when I was directed to that website to see what was actually really going on. After that whole thing blew up in 2 days, they completely revamped their website. They took out all that stuff about focusing on the Democratic candidates, and they were basically bragging about it until that thing blew up. And then so if they had nothing to hide, then they wouldn't have had to change all that.
That's funny.
So let me jump in on the masks really quick because, while it's going down in your area, I'm in New York and it is not going down at all. In fact, today, Cuomo held a press conference where he demanded that Donald Trump sign an executive order for the entire nation to wear masks.
Oh my God.
Joe Biden is running on that. Now this is a political issue. On top of that, he threatened to close down bars and restaurants today on Wednesday, said he was going to make that decision. All right. We are in a very, very bad situation when they can tell a nation of 300 plus million people to wear a mask in public or face up to a $10,000 fine. He also said he would be putting out metrics for different states that are affected by this. And if you do not quarantine yourself for 14 days after visiting these states, again, you can face a $10,000 fine. The businesses that in the last 3 weeks in my community are now enforcing the mask thing like they never were before. My police chief did not wear one for 4 months almost. And now he is wearing one. Why? Cuomo threatened to defund local governments and local police departments that were not enforcing this. This is very real in that respect. Again, they are putting it on paper. It is going to become a talking point of the left. This is not a left or right issue. The man said with a straight face today that 95% of the public in America wants masks and that it's only 5% that are pushing back against it. These are his words. He has signed more executive orders in the last 2 months than I think anybody in the history of being the governor of New York ever. We are in trouble and we're not focusing on this. People need to realize New York has a huge influence on what goes on in the rest of the country. If they are able to lock us in our homes and have vote by mail without any of the actual ways that you go through and register to vote by mail, we are fucked, man. They will put whoever they want in office, whether it's Joey B., whether it's the vice presidential candidate he chooses, or whether it's somebody like Cuomo who talks a good game and might challenge Trump in a debate. That's the scary part.
It's pretty funny from the outside looking in because all that so-called freedom you Americans had fucking evaporated quickly. And I mean, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, I was like semi-planning an exodus of how I was going to maybe move down to Oregon, or maybe I was looking at, actually Texas still doesn't seem too bad. But I mean, 6 months later, my level of wanting to move to the States one day is at fucking 0%.
But it's hard not to get conspiratorial after hearing all that. Why do they want us to wear the mask so bad? I mean, are they really trying to burn the immune systems down? And then what's going to happen after that? I mean, once people are inside, inside with this unhealthy. Everybody know, not everybody, but we've seen the studies. It's unhealthy, right? So why?
I just saw a lady post today that I know from my area, and she's a nurse, and she said that she's seen doctors before, who have to wear masks all day long in operating rooms. They just drop, they pass out from lack of oxygen. So it's ruining people's respiratory systems. So when the second wave comes through in the fall and the winter, it wipes out a shitload of people, and they're deliberately doing it. That's the thing. They're deliberately doing this.
And it's that Pavlovian dog training. What do you want? You want grandma to die? No, I'm not sick. I mean, the guy Fauci was on 60 Minutes saying, "What the fuck are you wearing a mask for?" He wrote in the New England Journal of Medicine in February or March, just saying what the coronavirus was. I mean, people are dying from it. But you and I, if we get it, we're gonna be okay. Whatever happened to Tom Hanks? He seemed to come out of it. Idris Elba. Oh my God, if Forrest Gump can get it, we all can get it. Like they all came out of it okay. Even these NFL players and NBA players, they're gonna be fucking fine. Well, like 99.9% of us.
Ryan from The Last American Vagabond, I don't know if you guys saw one of his recent videos, but he had one of these meters where you can check the oxygen levels. It's what like OSHA uses.
I saw that. Yep.
Yeah. And so for people who didn't see it, he put this meter next to his face, and obviously it came up normal. And then OSHA uses it for just in case you're working somewhere where the oxygen levels are too low, it creates obviously an unsafe environment. Well, he puts on the mask and he uses the same meter, puts it up underneath the mask near his mouth, and immediately the thing starts beeping, like warning you that the oxygen levels are at obviously a unhealthy low. Yeah. So it's it's one of those things where think about it, like people are driving alone with these things on all the time. I mean, there's a reason why when you're an athlete, you breathe heavy because your body wants more oxygen when you're running or exercising or whatnot. I mean, Wim Hof must be like super pissed because he's like, oh, look, I'm trying to get everybody to bring in more oxygen and now we're restricting all oxygen. And it's one of those things where people aren't even thinking about this. Like they're just okay with, and that's the thing about America. I was getting a lot of people from overseas contacting me saying they're making us do this, but I kind of see Americans being kind of rebellious. They'll fight back and whatever. And I kind of felt like the same way that because of it's still deep rooted in American culture of fighting back against the power or whatnot. But I was really surprised how many people were just willing to just lock myself in my house, isolate myself for 3 months. No problem. Save a life. It's like, well, fuck, if you never drive again, you'll save a couple lives. But we know there's a price to being free. There is a price to being free. Like when we leave our house, there's a risk that we could hurt ourselves or hurt somebody else. But that's also, just a part of being alive. So this idea when people were arguing, oh, just stay home, and even now, people who are still brainwashed. I mean, and everything has become a political football where this cops or Black Lives Matter, like that's all political football. It's like if you're a Democrat, we kind of know where you stand. If you're on the right, we kind of know where you stand. Same thing with like the COVID thing, and it's like it's just ridiculous. Can we look at each situation as its own thing, analyze it, and then figure out where we stand or on that specific thing? But too often people are they're falling for they're a political tool, and
it's even worse, man, because let's talk about it. First of all, you talked about defunding the police. Well, in my state, what have they done? They've created a contact tracing force that Michael Bloomberg, an unelected fucking billionaire, is in charge of. They've already hired 3,000 people. Now they're the people that are going to enforce this contact tracing.
Sam just burst onto the scene.
Yeah.
Hi, I've arrived.
Kick in the door, hold in the 4-4.
Kick in the door, please in the 4-4. Papa don't hit me no more.
I'm my dude. What's up, Sammy?
That's the contact tracing force, right? Now, on top of the contact tracing force, which are literally paid snitches that were out of work, you have the snitches you brainwashed that were locking themselves in their house the first day, making 25,000 calls on 16,000 plus establishments in New York State for not following social distancing and slave mask orders. They've trained them pretty good, man. I mean,
have you checked your phone? Have you checked your phone? Just about everybody's phone. I have an Android. My wife has an iPhone, and you can go into settings, and then I think you go to health, and you Google can see, Google, and then you already have the COVID tracking.
Flip phones, man. Flip phones.
You could, but it's hard to masturbate to
says
porn.
Samuel's iPhone right on your thing.
Well, they say you have to activate it to make it work, but I think even the fact that it's on there.
Yeah, but exactly. But if they can download it without you knowing, they can turn it on without you knowing.
Well,
I mean,
just like your microphone and your camera.
So listen to this. So I told Corbett on my last, he was just on, and I was talking about this, how they had this change because for everybody grade 2 and up in Massachusetts, they have to wear a mask, all the kids, right? Which, I told my wife, I'm like, we're homeschooling. If our kids have to wear a mask, my son's 5, my daughter's 3. I'm like, if they have to wear a mask, I'm like, we're homeschooling. I'm like, there's no if and buts. I'm like, we're doing it. I don't care. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to have my kids wear a mask, all day at school for how many hours they're there. And then there's this petition going that was like spreading like wildfire, and everybody in Massachusetts was super excited that it was getting all this attention and all this whatever, and all of a sudden the petition just disappeared. It was gone. And it just like that's why the censorship issue is so important, because you saw it like just completely turbocharged during the COVID-19 thing. I mean, it's like if you're protesting against the cops, put it all over TV. But if you're protesting for the lockdown, it's banned on YouTube. It's like it was so ridiculous, and it was so obvious that they have an agenda. And like my big thing is like no topic, no subject, nothing should be off the table. Like all these things should be able to be discussed. I mean, if it's race stuff, if it's cop stuff, if it's COVID-19 stuff, like, there should be no topic, and people should be able to see and have all these discussions. So unfortunately, so many of these things are taboo, and then people get tribal. And a lot of times you were censoring yourself, right? How many people were not posting stuff COVID related because they're scared that somebody's gonna, there's gonna be this storm of comments, and they're like, you know what, I'm not even gonna post it. And it's like, that's literally, we've become the issue. Like if now you're afraid of even having open discussions and sharing articles.
Not even just from the censorship standpoint. Look at what they're doing socially. People were being fined tens of thousands of dollars and having to choose between making a living and staying home and following these orders, not laws. But if you want to go protest George Floyd and BLM, they encourage it. Go out there and fucking do it.
Hey guys, I don't know if you guys have seen in California, but the governor's literally said, these counties, you could do this county, you could do that. You're like, what are you talking about? Why is it breaking down county-wise? And it literally comes down to who pushed back, got less restricted rules than the people just bent over and took it. LA County just bent over and just got cucked, while like Huntington Beach, they're like, oh, use your best judgment. And it literally goes to the fact that power is an illusion. They don't really run us, but we allow them to run us. And it's what I've said. It's like they have the right to rule when they rule us right. But these people, they're just so brainwashed that they just think they have to follow these rules. If we, it's not, what's it, namaste? It's like, I see you in me and I see me in you. If people would stop fighting all over these ridiculous groups they break us into, and we'd find common among all of us, we could push back so much stronger.
Well, this is not accidental.
Dialectic, man. They want to. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Charlie.
This is not accidental. All these things in 2020 that seem random and disconnected. You've got a virus. You've got the destruction of small business. You've got bank bailouts. You've got protests and riots and class warfare and all this stuff. It seems like there's a million things happening all at once that are disconnected, but they're not disconnected. There is a theme here. And the theme is that this is part of the Rules for Radical playbook that Saul Alinsky laid out. There are 8 levels of control that need to be obtained before you're able to create this social state that they talked about. Listen to these 8 and tell me if it doesn't sound like we're right in the middle of it. Healthcare, control the healthcare, you control the people. Poverty, increase the poverty level as high as possible. Debt, increase the debt to an unsustainable level. Gun control, remove the ability for people to defend themselves. Welfare, take control of every aspect of their lives, food, housing, and income. Education, take control of what people read and listen to. Religion, remove the belief in God. And the last one is class warfare, divide the people into the wealthy and poor. We're following the playbook. They're running this scam on us. We think that these things are all accidental and that it's happening to this group or it's happening in this region of the world. It's all part of the same plan. We're just not figuring it out. We haven't pulled back far enough to see that this is orchestrated and coordinated. So when you see people getting silenced on social media, that's not accidental. That's part of this whole situation. So we have to be aware that there is a coordinated effort working against us. And once we understand that, then we can start to make some changes. But right now, when everything seems disjointed, it's almost, you sort of feel like, where do you start? Well, start with an understanding that none of this is accidental.
So listen, I want to talk about just quickly the social media and the censorship, because it was really taking hold with the first thing you said, health, right? When you talk about healthcare right now, we're actually allowed to talk about now steroid treatment and vitamin D for COVID-1984. Why? Because authoritative sources have now put it into mainstream news sources. If you said that 3 or 4 months ago and you got over 100,000 views on YouTube, they pulled your channel. You know, if you were a doctor and you said that and you went viral on Facebook, they pulled you. That's one of the scariest aspects of this whole thing, is that they isolate you, they take you away from your family, and they cause a form of medical martial law where you don't get to demand the steroid treatment and you don't get to demand the vitamin D or the intravenous vitamin C. And that should be extremely alarming, because that is truly a life and death situation for you and your family if put in a situation where you might have to be put on a ventilator on a disease, again, that was very treatable from day one and people knew it. And this information is still being suppressed.
Yeah, well, we talked about it a little earlier, man. And Charlie, you just mentioned it. I think that's something, I think all of us here have enough prudence of thought and kind of, we understand the chess game. So many other people are playing checkers, but like you were just saying with Saul Alinsky, none of this is an accident. We just had on G. Edward Griffin, which was just like fucking mind blowing. Because, you know, going back to his interview with Yuri Bezmenov, understanding the levels of the ideological subversion that we're going through. I mean, this is such a very well thought out plan. And I think, again, instead of us being so reactive, you know, almost understanding this is something that it's been planned out for a very long time. And it's, again, I hate to sound pessimistic, but I keep saying on the show, even before this happened, they have to get rid of the old to bring in the new. And this new is, again, this technocracy, this authoritarian technocracy.
Yeah, for me, dude, you know,
Go ahead,
go on. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I just wanted to say real quick that, hi, Ben, how are you? Good to see you.
Good
I
to
just
see you
wanted
too.
to say that what we have also is a combination of people who feel like they have no hope with opportunists who are willing to sell them hope for money and cash and power. And that's why you have so much bad information being spread around, because there's people who have really no soul, who don't really care about the damage they're doing, and they only want to get their money now. But for me, I think that's all going to blow up in their face, and that they don't realize, you know, where they're at, this very special realm that we're in, and that, you know, they're just going to have to come back and do this all over again instead of learning like the basically the laws of nature and what we're here to do, and that is to help each other and to love each other. And they're not doing it. And guess what, man? You know what? When you die, you go to zero. So all the cash and prizes, and you know, I forgot who the quote was, but it basically was like, if people knew how little people talked about them when they were gone, they would stop worrying about their legacy and they wouldn't care about it. And they'd care more about helping each other.
Eagle versus the serpent, baby.
Yeah, it's so true. And you know, I'm really glad that Saul Alinsky was brought up, because, you know, his two students was Hillary and Obama, you know, and all of this is really, you know, you can kind of say that Obama is kind of the unofficial leader of everything that is going on right now. But, you know, then, you know, we still haven't really brought up the real issue. And it's like everyone's talking about, you know, the Black Lives Matter is talking about the slavery issues and everything else, but that's still happening to this day in most countries. You know, all the like Nike shoes, for example. You know, I wrote a post the other day. I was like, all we need is one celebrity to stand up and say, you know what, I don't want a contract from Nike anymore because they're dealing with slave labor, and working out of China and all this stuff. And then on top of that, you have the children, like the whole Epstein issue.
Ben, hold on. I'll say it for you. As a celebrity, I don't want to deal with Nike. I don't want to work with them. They do slave labor. I'll be the first one. There you go.
Problem solved.
High tops? Fuck out of here. I'm buying.
Yeah, I mean, it just takes one, but NBA star, right? But then we already know that the NBA basically completely sold out to China because of all of this stuff going on. But, all of this has really been a distraction from what happened with Epstein and the investigations that were going on with the Clintons and all these things, and the child trafficking and the child sexual abuse. We were talking about adrenochrome before, we went live. I mean, all of this stuff is connected. People are waking up. They're starting to realize it. They're going on Ellen DeGenerates or Degenerates. Yeah, I guess I could just say that. Ellen DeGenerates, page, posting all these different things of these celebrities. You have Lady Gaga, who just released her Chromatica, also Adreno, and then you have Chrome. You have Google that has the Adreno software called Adreno, then their web browser Chrome. All of these things are connected, and people are starting to unravel all of this. And I think the deep state are afraid, and it's like, okay, we need a distraction. Let's create the race war and get everyone to fight amongst each other. And they're just sitting back and laughing over all of this.
One of the things that I've been paying attention to, at least on my personal social media account, is the amount of people that are cheering for the destruction of statues. Regardless if they're Confederate or not. And I'm okay with taking down symbols of oppression as long as it's done through the democratic process and conforms to community standards. Now, one of my friends hopped up on there and was cheering this new Atlantic article saying how there are no Nazi monuments. But the same people that are cheering to take down these monuments are waving the hammer and sickle. And how many people have died or been enslaved or sent to work camps under that flag? And it's the hypocrisy, and it's this instilled doublethink that has been going on for the past 6 years online, where people are able to do one thing. They basically have become the hypocrites they once fought against, whether it's the banning of rap music because it could undermine the youth, or people going after Ice-T and Cop Killer, or they have become the religious right, and their morals and ethics reign supreme. Hypocrisy be damned. And it's very tough to talk to anybody about this and let them know, hey, you know what? You might be on the wrong side here. I understand the emotion, but you might be on the wrong side because it undermines the Constitution.
I want to talk about the statues just real quick, especially because the New York State right now is going to be taking down the Teddy Roosevelt statue in front of the Natural Museum of History, the original trust buster. The guy that reined in the corporations, the guy that gave us a square deal, the guy that started the conservationist movement, where he gave national parks to the people, the man that the teddy bear is named after because he refused to kill a bear that had already been beaten and tied up. He was my AP Social Studies favorite history subject of all time. Forget about president. He's somebody that we should be looking upon with, wow, this guy was ahead of his generation. He had the first black man at dinner at the White House, Booker T. Washington. And then in the same breath, Cuomo's allowed to say we're not taking down the Columbus statue because of our Italian-American legacy in New York. Meanwhile, he was a conquistador on behalf of Spanish royalty. And I'm not here to weigh in and say we should tear everything down. But to me, it's completely hypocritical that you got a guy like Columbus that gets a pass because gangster-ass Cuomo says so, and you're going to take down one of the most influential and best figures, in my opinion, in American history Teddy Roosevelt. The guy got shot and survived. He was the youngest president ever to be elected at the time, 43, and he only lasted about 10 years out of office. Incredibly popular, did great things for this country despite obstacles, and we are going to relegate him to the dustbin of history and try to declare him as a colonialist and evil. It is insane.
Meanwhile, a statue of Lenin stands strong in Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Read the book River of Doubt, about Roosevelt's trip down the Amazon. It basically, that trip killed all those guys eventually because they all got so sick with malaria and a bunch of other stuff. It's a very, very, very interesting book.
Just real quick, and then you have the statue of Baphomet that they erected not too long ago too. I forget what city it was in, but it's like no one's.
Yeah, I think it was DC.
No, I think it's Michigan. I'm pretty sure it was outside of Detroit.
Did they pull down Albert Pike the other day?
They did, and I covered that because again, Albert Pike, not a good guy. Confederate, KKK, but maybe you should be concerned about how he wrote doctrines about Luciferianism at the upper echelons of Masonry and how to really, take over society through secret societies that he was a part of. I don't know. But again, I'd rather go through the democratic process, and you take somebody like Pike, you don't start burning him on national television. You take him down the right way, you put him in a museum, and then you say, hey, these are some of the things this guy did, and this is why we moved him. And here it is in context. If you want to do it that way, for instance, Cecil Rhodes is now being taken down at Oxford. For those that don't know, Cecil Rhodes is like the godfather of modern-day roundtable groups. In fact, G. Edward Griffin talks about him in my film Invisible Empire. Well, they did that the right way. From 2015 on, there was a campaign to get him off. I wish it was beyond just him being a colonialist and, again, working on behalf of banksters and the predator class to consolidate their power over generations through foundations and institutional governments that are purely bureaucratic. But, hey, at least they did it the right way. Okay, so let's take Cecil Rhodes. Let's talk about what the Rhodes Scholarship still means to this day. Pete Buttigieg, he was a Rhodes Scholar. John Kerry, he's a Rhodes Scholar.
Bill Clinton.
What are people really doing?
Rachel Maddow.
She's hot.
Another one.
She's so hot.
Damn straight.
I'll tell you what, they take down that Gretzky statue in front of the Staples Center, there will be fucking hell to pay.
I think they should throw a dress on Oscar De La Hoya's, though.
That maybe. That might be high heels.
a little white painted under the nostrils.
A little bit.
One thing I think we're running into is it is kind of interesting about how our pop culture has belittled the need for fathers. And sometimes people have fathers in their lives and sometimes they don't. But I think we're seeing a generation that saw dads be kind of demeaned and kind of pushed into the corner. You have one side where due to very dark drug laws, we had the Black family unit destroyed. But then on the other end, if you look at who's doing a lot of these protesting, we have a lot of rich kids whose dads were such psychopaths. They were never at home and they just were at time trying to make as much money and as power as possible, never raised their kids. So we have both sides of the spectrum that didn't really have a really powerful father figure in their life. It's like these people are getting raised by babysitters and maids and all these people, and they feel so guilty about their life of luxury. They've gone completely overboard with this kind of oh my God, I got to feel for people because I feel really white guilt. I feel really bad about, how lucky I am and how much I've been given. But what eventually happens, same thing with the hippies, is where eventually they just they grow up, they realize they can't pay the bills off of love and drugs and, and sex. So they become cutthroat crony capitalism. And then they just end up screwing everybody they're trying to protect. It's just this weird cycle.
And on the darker side of that, like Yuri Bismuth says, they don't realize they're being used, whether it's racial, social class, they're being used. And when the powers that be are done with them, I hope it's not this dark, but they line you up against the fucking wall and they shoot you when they're done.
Yeah. Brown.
Whether it's they had a great upbringing, dad was there, he was a halfway decent guy. this level of entitlement with these kids, and there's like the complete disconnect from reality. They go around, a lot of them are just going around creating fucking chaos. And they were raised in this participation trophy, consequence-less society where, you know, hey, you fucked up, cool, here's a new phone. So they go out in the fucking world and they burn shit down. And when the cops start like, you know what, I'm fucking done with this. They have the nerve to scream like fucking bitches. You know, for every action, there's the equal and opposite reaction. But they, for some reason, think like, you know, we should just be able to do this and nobody should be able to say shit. And that's what's so frustrating with me right now. And I think we've covered it. Not only are they doing it, the politicians and the media is just like, no, they're peaceful protesters. No, it's all fucking good. You know, they're legitimizing this shit. And it's, for me, it's just a huge inversion of fucking reality, man. For Seattle, for them to take over a town, take over a police station. When does that ever fucking happen?
The irony of this is that they want to destroy statues and remove this stain of dark parts of history that they don't like. And yet what they don't realize is that if they understood history, what they would see coming is that, you know, they're always so concerned with everybody being a Nazi. Well, what did the Nazis do? They had the brown shirts, which is basically Antifa, go out there and destroy everything. And when that was done, Hitler Group, as that was happening, a parallel organization, the SS, was being grown. And then once they were ready, they sicked them on the brown shirts and wiped them all out. So these Antifa people that are so concerned with everybody being a Nazi and so in a hurry to remove history, if they only stop to study it, they would see that they are being used and they are walking into a gigantic trap. But they don't. So let them. You know what I mean? Fuck them.
Night of the Long Knives, dude. Night of the Long Knives, version 2.
Do you think you guys are going to centralize your police? You think that's what the defund thing's going to be? I think you guys are going to end up with a national police force.
The UN or NATO.
Exactly what it is, dude. That's the Hegelian dialectic, dude. Create the fucking problem to the, you know, things that you ordo ab chaos. And this, I mean, again, this is all part of the plan, the Bolshevik Revolution type shit. Yeah, whether it's federal forces, military, UN. I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
I'm concerned that the blue helmets will come in as the solution to this problem. And if that's the solution, then we're in deep trouble. It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Well, big problem. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Sam.
No, I just want to say that, you know, BLM is started by openly admitted Marxists. She's a black lesbian. She openly admits that she's a Marxist, which I'm like, if you study communism, even though Russia isn't communist anymore, it was for a long time. I mean, you see how, like, when you take away guns from the population in a communist country, nobody gets marginalized quicker than women, ethnic minorities, and gays. And she's all those. And, like, she has no clue where this notion that this thing works out perfectly for them, it's going to be better. It's like, you're just changing who's in power. To me, real capitalism gives everybody a shot. Not crony capitalism we have right now, but real capitalism. But it's like the notion of having a government and everybody owning everything is laughable. It's laughable. Egos, alpha males, they all take over at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's exactly, you know, why there's so much against capitalism, because socialism is, hey, I don't want to work, give me money, basically, right? And so, I mean, and I think that's why, you know, when you're against it, it's like, well, I mean, there's like a law in the universe. It's like you work hard for something, you get what you deserve, kind of thing, you know. And I think there's different situations where, you know, some people actually are looking for a job and they can't work and whatever, you know, that's very different. But getting back to, like, kind of related to the brown shirts and everything, you know, that's exactly how Hitler rose to power. He was using the brown shirts for, like, secretly, you know, and then publicly saying, oh, we're gonna attack the brown shirts. But he was the one building them up to begin with, and that's how he rose to power. And that's exactly what we're seeing with this. And this worries me too. And, you know, I watched a documentary on Amazon that's really good called The First American, truly about George Washington and really what kind of person he was. And I kept thinking as I'm watching this, I was like, you know, if all of the protesters or schools in general would show things like this, our society would be very different. But we're not really taught our true history, and that goes along with the whole agenda that what we've been talking about is like whoever is the victor rewrites history, destroys that history, and what we're not really taught anything much in school at all. So I think a lot of this plays into this agenda.
We're taught how to orders. That's what we're taught.
Sam, if you can, I know you're going for a jog, but if you can mute your mic.
Hey guys, I gotta bust. Thank you guys for having me on. This is always a really, really good time, and I always love hearing your perspective. So hopefully we're going to do this on a regular basis. Ricky, I'm down for it anytime. I really appreciate you putting us all together. So thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the flip.
Thank you, Jason.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Thanks for being with us.
Talk to you soon. Great job.
And being in New York, I feel you, man.
That was awesome, dude.
Later, brothers.
See you, Jason.
We're struggling in New York, that's for sure.
I think that, one of the things that we also see is this, we've been seeing it over the last couple of years, is the university system turning into this sort of social, like Marxist sort of ideology. And what's fascinating about this, once again, you would think that the university system, which has, one of the components is history, that they would understand what the history of these regimes are that grow up. Look at like in Cambodia with Pol Pot and the killing fields and everything. What was the first thing they did? Murdered all of the intellectuals. And yet here are these universities pushing this sort of philosophy and safe spaces. And we're going to give these people, we're going to give them the flexibility to talk about all these Marxist ideologies and blah, 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 blah. Like they don't even realize that like first order of business, all of them, they have a gigantic target on them because what do they not want? They don't want people to ever talk about history. They don't want people to remember a time when things were different or have the education or have the mental horsepower to be able to do something about it. So they're walking into this trap too, even with the university system is liberal. And I'm not liberal or conservative or whatever. I don't give a shit one way or the other. But the university system has gone full retard in the liberal sense. And they're churning out these kids that have you're supposed to go there to get prepared for the real world by what? Sitting in your safe space? I mean, come on.
I'm amazed, just real quick, Charlie, I'm amazed at so many of my artist friends. I have a degree in art. I went to art school. So many people that claim to be artists are so on board with censorship. It amazes me that they can't see a couple years down the line to see how this winds up and how, like, you are censoring yourself right now in your potential to create something for the world. It's mind-boggling to me.
That's because they're censoring the other side of the argument. I mean, if it was a bunch of conservatives, censoring, like they did, they put the parent advisory sticker on music. I grew up listening to metal. I'm like, they're censoring music. So it's like then that's when the artists fight back. So it's always okay when they're not censoring your side. I mean, but one thing I want to get into is that even though I think most of us, agree that they're definitely dividing and conquering, and the people who are pushing a lot of these protests don't really give a shit about any specific issue. It's more about dividing and conquering, like I said. But it's not to say that there isn't an issue there. And what I mean by that is, for example, like I'm sure most of us also know the story of Freeway Rick Ross. He ended up doing time for cocaine that the government helped bring in, the CIA, Barry Seal, Meta Arkansas, all that stuff. We know that story. It also ended up creating, filling up the prisons, right, with a lot of minority people who are doing crack, and doing drugs, and then the time you're doing for getting caught with crack was much different than if you got caught with cocaine, mostly because poor people did crack, rich people did cocaine, and it did end up causing this issue with one-parent households, right? You lock up all the minorities, a lot of minorities, these poor places, a lot of these poor people, they have single homes. We know statistically, if you're raised by one parent, the chances of you ending up in jail or whatnot is much higher. So there is
Ricky, that's Lyndon Baines Johnson. That's the Great Society. He was the beginning of that kind of welfare where they incentivized. Oh, we'll give you some money to keep pumping out kids, but dad can't be in the house. And that's in the late 60s into the 70s. And you're absolutely right. What happens into the late 70s into the 80s? We see heroin. We see obviously the advent of crack. We had Ricky Ross on talking the same thing. Yeah, this is all part of that social engineering. They're eugenics, man. They're eugenicists, rather.
Yeah, so
if you gobbled up 20,000 Nazis after World War II, you end up doing a bunch of Nazi shit a few decades down the road.
Precisely.
Now, I would argue you guys are running the same play you guys ran back in the 40s. You've just gotten better at it, so it's not going to take.
If it ain't broke, don't break it, dude. You know what I mean? They're reading from the same playbook.
Well, yeah, I think they wrote it.
Well, yeah, that's why I say that's why I said earlier before we went on. Maybe the social engineering, behavioral science, whatever. They know how to MK Ultra, not just individuals, but states, cities, countries, planets, dude. I mean, not to get into the whole mass thing, but it's really kind of insane what they've done and what they've normalized in such a short period of time, because they know us so fucking well. And all we do with this technocracy is just keep feeding them more and more information so they can get more digital algorithms on who we are, how to predict our, predictive programming type shit. So.
Can anyone comment on a personal level what it's like right now having a voice in this? Basically, we're living through, like, we've been talking about the war on consciousness for only maybe 7 years and talking about things like 9/11 and all this. And we are living through this long extended, basically 9/11 type event. And we all have a voice now, and it's become really real to our community. Like, can anybody talk about how they're dealing with that on a personal level?
Well, to piggyback on that, you guys answer this. I've asked myself, you guys have heard about the Mayan prophecy. It wasn't really the end of the life as we know it. It was the end of an age, an astrological procession. We're supposedly moving from Pisces into Aquarius, or I think vice versa. And this brings about huge consciousness paradigm shifts. And if you guys can speak to that, as well as personally having to, deal with this stuff.
Dude, I think they turned on CERN and fucked us all up. Because everything got weird after that.
Well,
Tom Hanks was the one who flipped the switch.
One is I'm done talking about COVID on my show. I just think it's negative energy, and I think my listeners are like, okay, we understand. I think they want to hear something else. I do honestly believe there's an enlightenment coming, and I know that's maybe positive energy and hope porn or whatever, but you see it across all these different genres of whether it's philosophy, religion, beliefs, conspiracies of a new era of enlightenment. I just think of whether it's Buddhism or, where one goes, we all go. I mean, you just see all these different groups talking about a time of enlightenment. And some people think it's not 2020, that it's actually 2012. And that we are about to enter into the enlightenment in which the Mayans were talking about, that our calendar was purposefully messed up by, most likely Jesuits, black nobility, or bisexual lizard people, okay? So it's always somebody who's messing with our stuff. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that we are entering a really magical time. I hear it over and over and over from people from all different walks of life, all different ways of believing, ancient knowledge, people new to the truth community. I hear it over and over again, and I really do believe it's going to happen.
Well, for the record, bisexual lizard people don't exist. I've looked it up on Pornhub.
I'm a woman. No, I'm a man.
And if we could find a way to maybe get into hollering at somebody in government to maybe change the name of a black nobility, because as a gentleman of color, I'm offended. And if there's a statue, it probably has to come down.
No, that's how secret they are. There is no statue. There's not even a rap group named Black Nobility. That's how secret it is.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, is there anyone in this discussion that even remotely thinks that COVID isn't just cover for the financial collapse? I mean, let's be honest. Everybody that was following banking stocks, global banking stocks, Jeff and I have been talking about it for well over a year on our show before this ever happened, that a collapse was coming. And, that's the thing is, for the people that haven't been paying attention, I get called names all the time, CTE sufferer, you got hit. Okay, Punchy, you know what you're talking about. I'm like, dude, it doesn't take a genius to follow global banking stocks and see that we were headed off a cliff in a short bus, with a bunch of these retards that think that COVID just magically appeared out of nowhere, out of a meat market in China. It's insanity. I mean, Deutsche Bank stock, I keep saying it till I'm blue in the face, because that one scared the shit out of me first. It dropped from $77 to $24 right before the collapse in 2008, and then went back up into the 50s. And then in 2018 dropped to like $6.80. And I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. And I went, oh shit. And then it dropped to $6.50 in 2019. That was the average price. And I'm like, it can't last. It can't last. It's not going to go any longer. All these people walking around, I just see human drones. Everyone around me, I just see them as human drones, just following orders, ignoring what is actually going on. And it's so troubling that people actually have the audacity to make fun of me when I was the one following the bank stocks and screaming it from the top of the mountaintops, right?
Well,
now,
Pat, I'll jump in here too, because in 2019 at Acapulco, my presentation talking about the coming collapse, the number one indicator I said was to watch Deutsche Bank stock. So you're not alone there. I was saying it is the canary in the coal mine. Watch this. This is we're in a world where everything is interconnected, especially in the financial industry. You can't just cut off one of these banks, one of these big banks, and say, oh, well, we'll just let it die off. Like we did in 2008 with Lehman. So everything is connected. So if one goes, they all go down. And when the first part of this COVID situation rolled out, it was so obvious to me that it was a cover for the impending financial collapse, because the banks can get blamed for it in 2008, and they took it, and they still spun it and got their money from TARP and from the Fed and everybody. But if they were responsible for the collapse 2 times in a row, 2 times within, like basically a 10-year or 12-year period, the people were not going to tolerate that. So they couldn't allow themselves to be found out to be responsible for this with their, a quadrillion dollars of derivatives, unsustainable things like this. So what better excuse than to put it on something that you can't really fault? You can say it was a natural disease that got out, and everything was going to be fine with our economy if it hadn't been for this, Scooby-Doo, like, if it hadn't been for this blasted COVID, we would have been fine, So you pull the mask off, and who's behind it? Well, the deep state's behind it. It's obvious.
Well, and then you get into the existence of BlackRock, and many of us know about it. Many of us have talked about it, and that's the deepest state you can get. Steve Mnuchin being who he is, former Goldman Sachs skull and bones. The vice president of BlackRock is former World Bank head. I forget the guy's name off the top of my head, the president. I mean, it's all just super, super deep state. They're probably, when people are talking about that Trump took over the Fed, like, no, I mean, they kind of took over our whole economic system with this, a different iteration of a kind of private financial institution. I mean, they own $7 trillion in assets throughout the world. So, I mean, nothing is ever as it seems, right?
Right. And, kind of going like well, I think, one, I do think everything that we reported on and looked at, I mean, we had like 10 episodes on the virus, and I'm with Sam. I'm like, dude, I'm so tired of talking about it. But, it especially in China, it really is real what happened. But, it was definitely utilized by the deep state over here. I'm not really as worried, as like what happened with the situation in China, but I feel that coming soon, there could potentially be something that, like the real outbreak, I should say. I hate talking about it, and I don't even like thinking about it, but it's just like it's coming into the election of 2020 and everything. And it's just, we just don't know what is going to happen overall. But the interesting thing about, we just did a 3-episode series on prophecies, and my gosh, like everything that is going on this year has been written about in every single culture, religion that you can possibly think about, and I completely 100 agree with Sam that I do feel we're actually in a state of awakening. There's going to be a mass awakening and a mass like spiritual awakening But I really,
the
Great Awakening, right? I mean, really. And I think that the downside is that we're going to have to go through a dark time. And I think, and we are going through it as the world is going through it. And I think everyone needs to, things are going to be displayed very clearly. I mean, from the outside looking in, you're going to be like, okay, it's very obvious to tell what's going on, right? I'm going to go over here or whatever. And I think that everyone needs to make a choice about where they stand. And, you know, recently there was a guy that came out and said that we had the Mayan calendar wrong. And he said that in 289 years ago or something with the leap year, they messed something up. And his calculations was actually the Mayan calendar ends on June 21st, 2020, which happened to be the same day as that crazy Ring of Fire eclipse that happened in like Israel and you know, on the other side of the world. So, I mean, in 20 is a very important number to the Mayans. That was like their most important number. So actually it kind of makes sense.
That's the equinox of the solstice, isn't it?
Yeah. It was the same day as the sol. So that's why this falling on this day was actually kind of makes more sense. And I never even thought, even with 2012, when it happened, I was like, this is not going to be the end of the world. We're actually going to go through a major change. And it's up to us as the people and as society and as the world to decide if we want that change to be a positive one or we want that to be a negative one. And I think that, you know, as things progress in a negative way, we're going to see more of the Great Awakening and the spiritual side coming into the more positive aspect. So I think people will naturally get more spiritual and feel more connected to this. But if they're disconnected from that, they're going to feel the opposite. They're going to get more angry and more, you know, focused on the negative aspect. And so we're going to see a big division in society. And, you know, I think it's all of us here. Reason why we're doing these things is to help these people understand the truth about really what's going on. And as like someone mentioned earlier, I forget who it was. Sorry. They were saying, you know, they're not liberal, they're not conservative. And it's like, I look at the same thing. Yeah. You know, it's like we're just looking for the truth. And I don't even look at what's happening like in politics as politics. This is a combination of like preserving America and preserving our culture and not letting the evil and the communism take over. And this is like the battle that is taking place. So, and I think there is a spiritual battle taking place too, you know, whether you want to look at it as like Satan or the negative forces or the reptilian aspect of it, you know, and then you have the positive aspect. And so all of this is coming together. And I think for those who are truly aware, this is like a great gift to be alive right now at this time and helping people and helping humanity. And I feel like this is why we are here.
As a disclaimer, I don't profess to know the truth about anything or have a better opinion than anyone else on anything. Except many canning. I'm getting pretty good at that.
Yeah, I definitely I got to dip here in a minute, though. I got to have some dinner with the fam here. But I definitely feel there is a paradigm shift coming. And, you know, you can't have the high without the low, the yin without the yang, however you want to say it. You know, it's always darkest before the dawn. And I think we are going to go through some pretty significant tribulation, if you will. And I'm not a religious guy, just whatever that word might have a religious connotation, but we're definitely going to see some rough roads ahead. But I do believe coming out of that, and we've been saying this even before, whatever, as a part of all of this reset, political, social, there is a huge spiritual component to this. And I think a lot of us are going to become more spiritual if we're not already. We're going to become more self-sufficient. I think, you know, overall, I think we're just going to become better at being human beings, because a lot of us are seeing how huge this divide and conquer is. And, you know, we all fucking know we have so much more in common than we do different. And, you know, a lot of this shit is just being weaponized, and it's working on a lot of people, especially the young. You know, we were all full of piss and vinegar when we thought we were idealistic and thought we had a fucking clue. But whoever mentioned it earlier, you know, you get older and you just realize, you know, the pragmatic nature of life. But, you know, I do believe this is it's a great time to be alive, dude. It really is. I feel bad. anybody who has kind of daughters or older daughters, my daughter's 12, and it's rough, man, her not being able to hang out and see her friends, but she's going to be able to tell these stories down the line and tell her kids and grandkids, you know, how this shift happened and how she was a part of it. So, yeah. I thank you guys for doing this, man. Like, obviously, every Monday, if we can do this, that's great.
I think we're going to try
guys, I got to jump as well. I got my last guest went too long, so I have to jump. I love this. The Union of the Unwanted, to see everybody here, Edge of Wonder, Grimerica, all you guys. I love hearing from you guys. And dude, anytime I can make this, I'll jump on. And I'm sorry for my haircut. So I
was just going to say, we got to talk about your mohawk, man. I'm fucking jealous as hell.
I've never been happier. It's really weird. It's both awful.
Hair envy
awesome.
over here.
Are you in California, Jeff?
Flustered here. I didn't comb my hair for one on air.
I love everybody on here. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Later, Sam.
Hey, thank you, Sam.
Thanks, guys. I'm out too, man.
Great job.
Thanks,
Take
Pat.
care, fellas.
Are you in California, Jeffrey?
No, I'm here in St. Louis still.
In Missouri, then? Is that Missouri?
That's St. Louis, brother, until they rename it.
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Missouri, I think.
Yes,
so you guys can't go to the playgrounds and shit yet?
No, we're fairly open down here, actually.
Are you?
I don't know if you guys can see me. I don't know what the fuck I just do with my phone. Yeah, we're fairly open, but I mean, as we're all hearing it, their teams fucking shut down. So I'm preparing myself for it, like most of us are. It's, you know, I think the earlier shit, you know, as much as they gauge metrics on us, our viewing habits, whatever, predictive programming shit. This was a beta test. See who's pushing back, how they push back. So I mean, like everything else, they've kind of refined the science for this phase 2. So I don't want to be whatever. There's always a silver lining to this shit, but I definitely think it's going to get a little gnarly because between the shutting of the businesses down, people losing their livelihood again as they just try to open up, plus the COVID shit, plus the social unrest, and you know everybody being told they're a fucking racist for whatever reason. It's a pressure cooker, right? So I don't know, man. I think the release of the pressure cooker is going to be a little ugly.
I think it's a pressure cooker by design. You know, I mean, I think that this is accidental, that they're stirring us up and getting us all right. I mean, we see the hypocrisy. We see the uneven enforcement of certain things. Censorship, mask wearing, got to stay in your house, can't go to the park. You can protest, but you can't open your... I mean, we say, everyone goes, okay, I'm done with this. You know, at some point, everyone's just going to stand up and go, we're fucking done with it. And this might actually turn out to be the good thing that comes out of this, in addition to this potential spiritual awakening, is that we collectively rise up and go, okay, I don't know what is actually happening, but I know that those people in government that are telling me what's going on, they're all full of shit. I'm certain of that. Everything else, maybe not. Because when you've got Fauci saying, don't wear a mask, it doesn't work, then, you've got to wear a mask or else we're going to fine you. And what Bermas was just talking about how, you know, Cuomo's saying that he's going to make it so that he wants to make it mandatory. Like, time out. Didn't you just have your guy Fauci a couple months ago tell us don't wear the mask? So let's iron out these inconsistencies with the official numbers, the official stories, the rate of people are getting it, the number of people that are dying. There's no consistency here with any of this stuff. So why should we act surprised that society is frustrated by this? Nobody knows the truth. So we're all sort of rising, and then we're fighting again. You better put your mask on. And the other people are saying the mask is bad for you. Like, fuck you. You got to put it on because Fauci said. Well, but Fauci also said, you know, what are we doing?
It reminds me, and I got a dip, but this reminds me, if you guys remember the Dr. Seuss story about the Sneetches. They all look the same, but one had stars on their belly, the other ones didn't. And the ones without, they're like, get the fuck out of here. You can't come hang out with us. You don't have a star on your belly. And then this Professor McMonkey McBean came in, had this star on-off machine, and had them all blow all their money. So the guys without stars went in there and got stars. And the people with stars were like, oh my God, let's take these stars off. And so at the end of the day, they all were fucking broke, trying to be star and starless. And they realized, like, you know what? We're all just fucking Sneetches, dude. So hopefully we can kind of extrapolate some of that love and just realize, you know, we're all human beings. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
It's an uncomfortable thing to kind of wake up to the fact that you've been unwittingly supporting a fascist regime for like 100 years. You know, people just don't want to snap out of that. It's kind of like it's, you know, it might take a might take a little longer for people to shake that off.
How about a jab in the arm? Will that shake it off?
Well, that's sort of the same thing. I mean, the vaccine's another good thing where you get people that there's a certain factor of not wanting to think that you've had the wool pulled over your eyes on something that can be as serious or have as far-reaching implications as that. And I think that's sort of the same thing in the age of information when you wake up to the fact that your fucking government, and not just the U.S. one, the Canadian government's complicit. Most of the Western governments have been marching towards this corporate fascist takeover of the fucking planet for 100 years. And they say all the things, and Black Lives Matter in the USA, I guess. They don't matter in fucking Libya where there's a slave trade, and they don't matter in Yemen where U.S. and Canadian fucking bombs are blowing fucking kids up every day. They don't matter there. They just matter here where there's a political purpose, so that you guys and us guys and everyone else can't fucking notice the fact that these fucking fascists keep marching in the same direction. It doesn't matter if it's Trump or Obama or Bush or you fucking name it. Every fucking president for the last 100 fucking years is cut from the same ilk, and they can say this, that, and the other and have you arguing about abortion and fucking everything else. But look at the policies and look at the globe, and the same fucking thing is happening no matter which party's in charge. That is the definition of fucking politics, That is the definition of original fascism. You're not going to find that definition in any of your fucking dictionaries today. But, we're there. We're fucking
we probably
there.
have all said it, or we've typed it or whatever. We've seen the meme. It's easier to lie to somebody to convince them that they've been lied to. I don't know if that's Mark Twain or some shit, but I appreciate you guys. Riky, thank you so much, man. Grimerica, all you guys, love you, man. And let's just keep doing this. And honestly, I said this last time, let's keep the Swapcast going. Everybody, let's try to link up. Let's get a Swapcast. Grimerica, we haven't talked in a while. Riky, we'd love to get you on. And, everybody, Charlie, Mr. Magic Mike, let's do this. Because I think that's how we all grow, as we talked about before, and just the ripple effect of leveraging everybody's audience. So I appreciate you guys, man.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, guys. Peace and love, guys.
Yep. See you, Jeff. Now that he's gone, we can't talk about race anymore. That sucks.
Well, I'm a status Indian, so we're okay. I'm a registered Indian, so we're good.
That was actually Jeff laughing, I think.
Yeah, well,
he was still there.
I'm trying to turn this shit off. All right, guys. See you later.
I think maybe we should. You guys want to wind down the show? You want to guys go for a little longer?
Yeah, no, we should wind it down. I don't meet my kids
I
at
should
the
probably
park.
get going too. So.
Did you say you left your kids at the park, or you're meeting?
No, I'm gonna go meet them at the park.
Oh, are they your kids or are they other people's kids? You're not meeting other
my
people's kids,
and they're old enough to be at the park by themselves.
Okay,
Stop judging.
Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Grimerica. I really appreciate you guys coming on and hanging out. We didn't even get to Project Bluebeam or UFOs, a subject that could bring everyone together. Maybe next time we'll touch on
that. Might be the only out for Trump and the alliance. That's got to be the thing.
Yeah, what's
free energy?
Is Trump part of the alliance?
Well, with the free energy, I started realizing it. I think they have to do it very systematically because, so many of our cities in America depend on oil.
Yep.
And if all of a sudden we brought in free energy, it would destroy so many cities in America and make a lot of people poor.
Yeah.
So I think the key aspect is first we need to bring down the deep state. Once Trump has complete control, then I think that's what the Space Force I believe will do. They'll bring.
Is this cult stuff? Is this part of the cult we were talking about earlier? Space Force.
Well, he better hurry up because he's running out of time.
Yeah,
he is running out of time. We got a few months left, right? So.
I'm telling you guys, man, Trump was just a giant smoke screen. He was exactly.
We'll see.
He was exactly what exactly what the recipe required for the age of where we're at to keep us all distracted. I mean,
we'll see.
Who knows what's next?
We'll see. It's not over yet.
All right.
I'm still on the hopium. So
it's never going to be over. It's never going to be.
I think with the arrests and everything too, the problem is all the judges are paid off, right? Let's say they do make mass arrests, bring people on trial. The judges are paid off. They're like, oh, okay, whatever. That's what happened when they brought in all Hillary Clinton and Comey and everybody. It was like everybody was being paid off. So everyone got off. So they need to have the military tribunals. And for that to happen, they really, and I think that's going to happen, but I think it's It's the people. It's really about the people. If they bring down Obama right now during the middle of all of this, people are going to lose their minds and riot even more.
Yeah.
So I think
right.
it's really about timing,
Yeah.
Well, I think
it's
a lot
about distracting us so that they can keep doing fascist things.
Mission accomplished.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think the 3 months of lockdown people just once they had a reason to leave the house and protest, I feel like it only helped the situation, right? I mean, it was a lot of just built up energy, and then they just needed to take it out somewhere. And it is unfortunate that they're kind of being used for other reasons, and many of these people probably have real sincere concerns about police brutality or whatnot. So and it's not to take away from that, because again, like, there are obviously other people influencing what's going on. How come I always end up going on rants when Mike puts on the music at the end? I feel like
you're the closer.
Yeah, you're closing it down, Ricky.
I feel like I'm at the Oscars with the music playing. Like, shut the fuck up, get off stage.
We're playing you off.
Have sex with those dudes. You look good.
But yeah, hopefully we're planning on doing this every other Monday. Feel free to show up anytime you want. I'll keep you guys in the loop, and show up for a little bit. And I think the other thing too is, as everybody kind of gets to know each other and we get more comfortable, I think I've seen it a lot with like Mike, Charles, and Sam and I. You become much more open to kind of be yourself, be silly, not take the conversations as serious. So I think as these things go, it'll actually be more fun, as people get comfortable with one another or whatnot. That's what the nice thing about having Sam on, is that you can always count on him to, ruin a serious topic by saying something silly. I shouldn't say ruin it, by, spicing up the conversation.
He breaks
breaks the ice. Yes, which is nice. I think sometimes when you talk about this stuff, it can get a little depressing. It's nice to have a comedian who says a dick joke from time to time and ruins everybody's name, and which is always fun,
Well, when I had him on my show, I made sure to butcher his name when I introduced him.
That was hilarious. I remember when you did that. You said his name wrong when you introduced
Sam Tripoli. I go, is that how you say it? And he just laughed. He's like,
no, we really appreciate coming to me. Yeah, we really appreciate what you guys are doing. It's awesome. And awesome. We'll be back for sure.
Good to see you guys in Canada. Ben, nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet all you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
I think Rob's going to come on next